Okay, Dino, thank you. Welcome everybody to Planned's webinar and our very important topic today, active shooter protocol. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the session. So if you look at your Zoom bar, there's a Q&A button there. If you click on that, you can enter your question, and Dino or John will be able to address it as we go along, or possibly at the end, I guess. Do you want to do it at the end, Dino?
Sure. I'll tell you what, if folks have questions in the middle of it, I'm fine with that. Very informal. Let's keep it light.
All right, very good. Okay, let me click here. So this webinar, we've given it a number of times. Dino has presented it multiple times, probably, I don't know, 20 times at least. First in 2018, we've delivered it all over in the territory in which Planned covers, and also multiple, besides multiple states, multiple communities, multiple buildings and areas with property management companies, etc. Our speakers today, oops, sorry, I'm having a little mouse problem here. Our speakers today, Dino Iuliano is the Chief Revenue Officer for Planned Companies, and Dino has been with Planned for almost 20 years now, and before that he worked as a personal protection specialist, was a sheriff's deputy, and also served in the U.S. Marine Corps. And with Dino, John Reichart. John also has a law enforcement background, retiring from the New Jersey Transit Police Department, and has been working in property management for a number of years as well. And with that, I will hand this over to you, Dino.
Thank you, Nick, and really appreciate that. And welcome in, everybody, once again. This is a topic that's difficult but necessary, right? No one wants to talk about stuff like this, but we found, and as Nick pointed out, we did a lot of these, and we did it because it was in demand. And once again, it's in demand. So just know that it's uncomfortable on this end as much as it is on that end, perhaps. And there's some video today that's going to be a little graphic, but I think it drives the point home. And I think it'll show a lot of what John and I are going to be discussing. And there's no better way to learn than through seeing and video. So there'll be plenty of that. You see me looking over this way a lot different than usual. It's our presentation for John and I is off to the side a little bit. It's a little unconventional. So when you see me looking at the screen, you know what I'm doing. So we have some videos. Again, we're going to see a few videos today that will illustrate the impact that active shooter events have had on our culture. There's a timeline of events which you'll see in these videos of some of the tragedy that's happened. That's not new. And you'll see, this has been going on for quite a long time. So we're going to show you some of those events that have changed our culture the way we know it today. We're going to look at some key statistics and the timelines of these events, especially in the recent years. We're going to review the Homeland Security's plan, and you're going to hear it a lot today. Run, hide, fight. We're going to dive into each one of those categories and our opinions and what we think is important to take away from each one of those events that Homeland Security talks about today. You're going to learn what to do when law enforcement arrives on site, hopefully during, perhaps after. It's still an event. It's still happening. You need to be prepared for when they arrive on site. How to tailor a plan for your community. So we're not just going to show you scary stuff. We're going to help you create a plan that after you leave here today, you'll be better prepared than ever before. And I'm going to add to that at the end of this today and talk about preparedness with what happened at the Capitol. Yeah. Okay, so we have a quick video to get us started. This one's a little loud, a little graphic, but I think it definitely, this video usually wakes everybody up for this presentation. Go ahead.
This is just dozens and dozens of students that are fleeing for safety.
We have had reports of shots being fired inside the school.
We do have some fatalities.
3 hours of terror overnight, multiple shootouts, hostages, a packed nightclub under siege. Authorities say Omar Mateen arrived at Pulse Orlando, a gay nightclub and bar, armed with an AR-15 type assault rifle, a handgun, and an unknown number of rounds of ammunition.
And this is our Western edition. Good evening. It began as an ordinary school day, and it was almost over when gunfire erupted this afternoon. This deadly mass shooting happened in Parkland, Florida, about 20 miles northwest of Fort Lauderdale at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, attended by about 3,000 students.
At least 58 people now dead, more than 500 people wounded in a horrific shooting on the Las Vegas Strip. It's the deadliest mass shooting in modern United States history.
This morning, the Sandy Hook Elementary School was full of kids concerned about Christmas. And then at 9:40 a.m., shots rang out.
All units, the individual that I have on the phone is continuing to hear what he believes to be gunfire.
Right, so that's just an illustration of some of the things, and we've all seen them. We've all watched the news reports. We've all been, shocked and horrified by some of it, especially the ones in the schools. For those of you who have kids, it's our worst nightmare. But between 2019 and 2020, there were 409 active shooter incidents, or 1.19 per day. So think about that, 1.19 per day. And it doesn't matter where you are. The Stoneman Douglas School is 2 hours from here. And here's a good example: Texas, Columbine, Aurora, Kalamazoo, Walmart in Oklahoma, California, Virginia, all over the place. And it could be, unfortunately, it could be by us, and it has been. If you're in New Jersey, we had a mall shooting. There's things that happen near you all the time, and you're just not, thankfully part of it, or in some cases, not aware of it.
Yeah, to add to what John's saying, he's absolutely right. If we listed 1.1 a day for a year, there certainly would be a lot more than what you see on the screen, right? We would be able to go around this room several times, but you don't hear about all of them. And I think that's why bringing awareness to security is important, because we become, unfortunately, when it happens regularly, we become immune, and people they think they have to live with it, or they think that it's something that's going to happen, or they're going to just be a victim of it if it should happen, or they cross their fingers and they hope it doesn't happen. Well, we could tell you the better prepared you are, the more you invest in the safety of your folks, your buildings, your environment, better chance you have of surviving or minimizing a horrific security situation.
If I could add to that. So if you think about, most of us, I know Dino, myself, we are in the residential property, management world. So oftentimes, we hear about what's happening in these public spaces. So all of us have jobs, obviously, that's probably where you found this through LinkedIn. So we have our office environments we have to concern ourselves, but we also have our home environments. And for those of us in high-rise and other multifamily management, this is a real concern, because our people, when they're home, it's where domestic violence takes place. It's where someone's going after their ex-wife or their ex-husband. There's a custody dispute about children, and this is how most of these things happen. A lot of the shootings that you don't hear about happen as a result of domestic violence. And domestic violence happens where? In the home, and that's the business world. So that's a very real concern, and something that we have to, you don't necessarily have to, have drills like they do in schools, but you have to at least think about it and have your people think about it. It's probably one of the most important things. As much training as we do for fires with fire drills and other things, we need to consider that this is just as important. The schools have done that, right? It's part of their, the routine, as sad as that is. But schools are doing regular hide in place or shelter in place drills, just like they do fire drills. It's almost something that we don't have to go that far in our workplaces or our for those who work in the residential field in that regard. But it's something we have to at least make our people aware of, let them think about it.
Great points, John. And just, not to keep on the screen because I want to move forward here, but in the beginning, I can remember going back to Columbine, which is probably the first massive one that I can recall in my lifetime. And, then people were just thinking this was going to be a school thing. Well, if we just secure the schools, active shooter will go away. And Virginia Tech happened, okay, still schools. But then it started becoming movie theaters, and it started becoming shopping malls, and then it was Walmart, then it was courthouses. Then they're like, okay, it's not, we can't just say it's a school thing now. It's an anything thing. An active shooter, you can have an active shooter anywhere. So being prepared everywhere, and how you prepare can be different, but having a plan in place is required by all. So Nick, if we can move forward. So we have a quick video on what the Department of Homeland Security has said. And they've been saying this for a long time. And John and I will touch on that in a few. But why don't we go ahead and start this video.
Active shooter events can occur anywhere at any time, and frequently involve individuals attempting to kill others indiscriminately. These events are unpredictable and can evolve quickly. For this reason, whenever you enter a building as an employee, guest, or customer, you must be prepared and know what it is you will do if faced with the worst case scenario, even if it's just another day at the office.
Last night, every time I closed my eyes, all I could see were slide decks.
Don't remind me. Sorry I'm late. Did I miss anything?
Hey, you got a minute to catch me up on that thing?
Yeah, come on in. Is Amelia here too?
Let me grab her, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
When startled by a gunshot, it's a natural human reaction to freeze. Unfortunately, this response leaves you vulnerable to what might come next. If you see someone frozen in place in this type of situation, make your best attempt to assist them.
I think it's critical that we find a way to make sure this doesn't happen again. We've wasted way too much time.
That's gunfire.
Are you sure that was a gunshot?
That's gunfire.
Was that really a gunshot? Call the police.
If you can't easily evacuate, the best option is to hide. Lock the door, stay close to the ground, and try to find cover from any stray gunfire that may penetrate the walls. If you're able, call 911.
What was that?
Sounded like a gunshot. What should we do?
Come on, let's get out of here.
When possible, the best alternative in an active shooter event is to run. If your path is clear and you can safely reach an exit, evacuate as soon as possible. Of course, some may not have such easy access to a safe exit. In these situations, you must decide for yourself whether it is best to evacuate or to hide. As with any of these options, if you do choose to run, Commit to this action. And remember, police will be arriving to assist you and to evacuate the wounded, so be sure to keep your hands up and empty as you clear the building. Otherwise, put simply, don't stop running. Once clear of danger, make contact with 911 to assist their response by providing them information about the shooter, the weapons they're carrying, and the amount of wounded that may still need medical assistance. If you have been unable to evacuate and are trapped in the facility during an active shooter situation, remember, making the decision to hide does not prevent you from putting up a fight later. If you are confronted by the active shooter, you have to assume that your actions are all that stand between yourself, your colleagues, and grave harm. Fight for your life. Search around you for sharp or heavy objects that you may use to disable the attacker. Collaborate with those around you to ensure you aren't acting alone. You're taking action for your survival, so do not hold back, and do not stop fighting until you know beyond certainty that you are safe. Committing to run, to hide, or to fight will keep you safer than if you freeze during a crisis. Remember to prioritize your safety. If you come across those who are wounded and may need assistance, assist them if you can, but do not let them inhibit your escape. As an individual, the most important thing you can do to keep yourself safe, whether it is to run, hide, or to fight, is to commit to your decision and to continuously reevaluate the situation. If you own a business or operate a large public facility, you may be able to better enable individual response to such events by identifying emergency escape routes and exits. Use this information to design evacuation plans that can be used by employees and guests to your facility. Reach out to law enforcement to see if they'll come to your facility and assist you in drafting your response plan or guide you to training that may assist employees in their survival. Remember, this training may be the difference between life or death. See about technology you may be able to incorporate to make your facility safer, which may include audio or visual cues for those with access and functional needs. Plan for and train your employees to assist those who may not be able to run, hide, or fight. Equip them with a first aid or a go kit, an emergency ladder in case you're not on the first story, and explore the possibility of mass notification technologies, which may enable you to alert those in the area of any present dangers. Of course, the hope is that neither you nor any of your friends or colleagues will ever be confronted with an active shooter situation. However, should the worst case occur, know that you can always run, hide, or fight. For more information and resources in active shooter preparedness and response, please visit dhs.gov/active-shooter-preparedness, including DHS's new Active Shooter Preparedness Virtual Learning Center, a feature-length video sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security that can teach you how to mitigate, respond to, and better react if confronted with an active shooter event.
All right, so a scary video, but something that I think is important. If you take nothing else from today, it's that pop, that noise. Those who have shot guns and who are familiar with guns know what it is, know what it sounds like, know what it smells like. For those of you who don't, it's something you have to keep in the back of your mind. What was that noise? And if you think it sounded like it, people usually say in my experience, we'd go to a shooting and what was that noise? It sounded like a firecracker. That's what I always heard. It sounded like a firecracker. Probably not a firecracker if it's in your office. So think about it and keep that in the back of your head. If you hear it, that's probably what it is. Get out. So the run, hide, and fight plan, it's important. And it's important because if you're thinking, like we suggest, if you go into your office, if you're in a building that you manage or whatever else it may be, think about the exits. Where are they? Just like you would in the fire, with a fire plan. As former law enforcement, it's all I think about. If I walk into a restaurant, I'm thinking about where the exits are. It's ingrained in you. But for most people, it's not. And I think that it's important to consider these things when you're training your people, whatever your training may be. If you're doing annual, sexual harassment training and things like this, I think it's important to incorporate these things. Let them think about the exits. Let them think about the run, hide, fight scenario. And if you put it into people's heads, not that you have to instill fear, but you at least awareness. And that's the whole reason we do this, is to make everyone aware that this is a reality of our world, unfortunately, but it is a reality. And it's something that we need to consider. It's something that we need to make sure our people consider, and it's something we need to prepare for.
Yeah, we're not planning or even attempting to create security experts today. But just to pass on knowledge, when we were little, we all learned, as John pointed out earlier, what to do during a fire alarm. We didn't have to be security experts to know what the sound meant. We didn't have to be security experts to get out. After 9/11, horrific 9/11, you go to the airport now, we know what to do. We don't have to be security experts to know that we have to take our shoes off, take our jackets off. We're better trained. We're better trained. And training, and going back to this video and hearing run, hide, fight, it sounds simple. But some have never, like John said, ever had to hear a firearm go off, wouldn't know that there is an alarm. Some can't run anymore. Maybe they have an injury. So how are you running? Where are you running to? How are we protecting those who can't run? What is the plan for the disabled? What's the plan for the handicapped? You got to have a contingency plan around them. First, know who they are, and then have a plan that includes them, because we're certainly not going to leave somebody behind who can't run. Those who commit to running, those who commit to not running, I should say. Every time I do this presentation, I said if it was my way of doing things, it would be run, run, run all the time. The best way to avoid a horrific situation is to not be there or have been prepared around it. If you cannot run or you choose not to, know that you've chosen to hide, and therefore you've also committed to fighting. As you saw in the video, when you can't hide and you're left, there's one thing left to do if you are found, and that is to fight for your life with everything you have. Just like some of the other things I said, I know folks who've never been in a fight in their lives. I know plenty of people who don't want to fight. I don't blame you. I don't want to fight either. A lot of folks don't want to fight. Having the training to fight is different than wanting to fight. Fighting for your life, fighting for your family, fighting for your colleagues is a lot different than wanting to fight. So I suggest if you haven't had any kind of training around defending yourself, I would look into it. If you can maybe do group settings, make it fun for you, for your company, for your residents. It's good for everybody to know. What is an active shooter? An active shooter is an individual engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. That sounds a lot like what we identify as a terrorist. There is often no pattern or method to their selection of victims. They want to hurt, maim, harm, destroy anything and everything in their way. They're not being selective. Most shootings are not classified as active shooter incidents. Coming out of law enforcement, I know John and I could agree, and plenty of you who I know on this video, we classified a lot of things as domestic violence, drug activity, crimes, and gang activity, routine criminal incidents, and then terrorism, because we didn't know what to call this thing until not too long ago, until these tragic events happened. And they weren't doing it for their country, they weren't doing it for their God or their creed, or they were doing it for themselves, for their mental issues. So active shooter has been now identified as a name to call these kooks and what they're doing. A little bit about what is an active shooter. Thank you, Nick. So we talked about run, hide, and fight as an overview of the plan. We're going to dive into each one of those sections now and tell you what it really means to run, hide, and fight. Things to consider when you're going to make one or any of those choices. So let's start with run. So evacuate if possible. If there is an accessible escape path, attempt to evacuate the premises. Be sure to, so run, run, run. But if you don't know where you're running to, if you're running into danger, if you're running into harm's way, one of the other things I want to point out in the video was the technology. They showed the lights, the communication is the best way to put it between your teams, people you need to get to safety. They need to have a communication plan. Technology is critical. More and more technology and security are marrying. Down the road, you'll see a presentation on that. It's critical that you have a security technology plan in place to be able to succeed in an active shooter situation. So consider lighting, put that in the back of your head, but even communication. Does it have to be an alarm? Can it be signaling somebody's phone? Don't come into the building because we're in the middle of an active shooter situation. You know, how many times have we seen, you'll see one of our videos today, people attempting to enter a building who were safe, who now became unsafe because they were not alerted that there's a situation. So think about that going forward. So have an escape plan. You got to practice these plans. Evacuate regardless of whether others agree to follow. You got to get out of there. You can encourage somebody. Hey, John, we got to get out of here. John's like, yeah, it's another false alarm. I'm out. I can't sit here and try to encourage somebody else that their life matters. I'd rather live to fight another day. Leave your belongings behind. Obviously, help others. We talked about that. If people are struggling, if they have disabilities, help them. That's different than they don't want to leave. Prevent individuals from entering an area where the active shooter may be. Of course, keep your hands visible. Law enforcement's coming in. You're coming out. No one knows who's who at this point. If you're coming in and you look threatening, you can get plowed down just like the shooter will. Follow the instructions of police and any police officers, of course. Do not attempt to move wounded people. You could make it worse. Call 911 when you are safe. Absolutely. More on that in a little bit, but I want John to jump in.
You want to go to hide? Or
Well, I just, on the calling 911. So I wanted to, you know, I was fortunate enough to be in another active shooter presentation in Atlantic City with another member of the team. Gosh, it has to be more than a year, pre-COVID. And we got to meet the admiral and a woman who was involved with the Naval Yard shooting several years ago. And, you know, when they described how they felt during this event, and they admittedly said there had been no training. They really didn't have a plan. They knew how to lock down clearly because it was a naval yard, but they never thought a civilian could just walk on their naval yard and just start opening fire. It never crossed their minds. The two things I took out of it. One was this young lady who survived, and I'll touch on that in a second. She said she called 911 just like she was always told to do when she was a little kid. And she said the shooter was not in her immediate area, but was headed towards her dad, who also worked in the same area as her. She picked up the phone and called 911, and she said the questions that she were being asked were just absurd. And the 911 operator clearly did not have her safety in mind. And she tells a story, she was just so frustrated that she threw her phone and it shattered. So by calling 911, don't think that it's imperative that you do it in the middle of a situation. Make sure you're way safe, not just semi-safe, to call 911. And if they're frustrating, they probably already know your location. They're going to come and track you down. You know, another thing that she mentioned was how close she was to death. She watched the shooter take out her boss, and then she was lying on the ground begging for her life, put the gun to her head, pull the trigger, and in jail. And that's the only thing. And he said to her, I guess your life is spared today. And I think the person who was with me is on this call today. So you'll remember, I still get choked up when I even talk about the story because I couldn't imagine if that was a loved one of mine or anybody I know. It's a horrible thing to go through. But the 911, the terrible situations, that was on a naval yard. Sure, there were plenty of weapons, and they still couldn't stop this crazy person from doing what he did. So looking for a spot to throw that in, and this seemed like the right one.
So let's, Nick, let's switch to hide. So I want everybody to think back almost 20 years now to 9/11, right? The run thing, we're now on hide, but with run, when those people knew something was wrong, a lot of them unfortunately stayed in the building. You'll know, it's, the spidey senses, as they call it. You know if something's wrong. If you feel something's wrong, get out. If you can't get out, the next thing is to hide. And you have to think about what makes sense. Hiding in an open room with nothing, nowhere to conceal yourself doesn't make sense. If you know your work surroundings, you know where you are, you know your home, whatever location you find yourself in, if it's a shopping mall or something else, get yourself to a place. Ideally, lock the door if you can, barricade the door, and then hide yourself in a concealed space. And the most important thing, make sure your phone is on vibrate. Don't make any noise. If you hear anything, you've got to be super quiet. And that's, it's just, we all played hide and go seek when we were kids. This is the real deal. Let's go to, hold on, let me go over the slide. So if evacuation is not possible, right, be out of the active shooter's way, provide protection if shots are fired in your direction, right? Office with a closed and locked door, something solid that you could hide behind. Don't trap or restrict your options for movement, right? So think about, if this doesn't work, where can I go from here, right? And of course, lock the door. Let's go to fight. All right, so here's the way it works. If like Dino said earlier, if you choose not to run and you're choosing to hide, you might have to fight. So first rule, when somebody's trying to kill you, there is no such thing as a fair fight. They taught us in the police academy, and they drilled it into our heads every year. If you are going to die and you don't have a gun, you pick up a chair, you pick up a bat, you use your car, and you do whatever you have to do to end the threat. And the same thing goes for us. We are human beings. We don't want to hurt other people. Some people do, unfortunately, but most of us do not want to hurt anyone. But there's times where if it comes down to you or them, you're going to have to make that choice, and you're going to have to do things that you ordinarily wouldn't do. So again, if the active shooter,
this is a second slide on.
Oh, second slide on.
You can go forward.
Yeah, let's go forward to fight. Right. So fight is the last resort, right? And only, don't be a hero. Only if your life depends on it. Your life depends on it. Attempt to disrupt or incapacitate the active shooter by acting as aggressively as possible against him or her, throwing items and improvising weapons, right? Like I said, letter openers, paperweights, anything that you could pick up and realistically use as a weapon. Yelling and commit to those actions. If you go, you've got to go, because this person, in most of these cases, in fact, all of these cases, these people go into it knowing that there's a very, very high likelihood that they're going to die, or with the intention of dying. So if you are going to choose to fight, you've got to go all the way.
Just want to add, it doesn't take much, and militaries have been doing it for years. That's why they have these things called boot camp, because we're not trained as children that it's okay to hurt somebody. In fact, we're told you're never to touch anybody. Don't put your hands on anybody. Stay away. So fighting is an unnatural thing. But I can tell you, it only takes 7 pounds of pressure to kill somebody. It doesn't take a lot to immobilize somebody. The training that you get around fighting can save your life, as unnatural and as unpleasant as it feels. If that's your own weapon, that's a weapon you always have with you, right? So you don't need to go find your weapon, find a gun, be MacGyver, create a knife out of a pencil. If you have the skills and the knowledge to fight, your weapon is always available. Disorientation, as you see in this slide, is critical during a fight. It's critical for winning. It's crazy, and I know I've seen crazy, as crazy as you could make yourself in a fighting situation, also gives you strength. That's why you hear martial artists and they grunt, they make noises. It brings power. By doing that, you will potentially disorient the eyes, obviously the points in the head that will take somebody out, critical. So commit to it. You can do it. You know, there's a lot of people who are like, I can't do that. Well, it's for your life and your family and your children. You will do it. You will absolutely.
I mean, that's all I have on fight. You know, I have the benefit of being able, and I do. I carry a handgun every day. But most people don't have that benefit. The thing that we have to think about is am I ready to do this? And you are. I assure you that you are. And you know, if push comes to shove, you will be ready. All right. What next slide?
Yeah. John, I'm glad you brought up the handgun thing, because not everyone can do it. But just like fighting, if you have a handgun and you're not trained on how to shoot it, or you're afraid to shoot it, it'll be used against you. So I think, you know, some people say, oh, you have this tool, it's an unfair advantage, or not if you're not going to use it, or if you're afraid to use it. So no different than fighting. I don't think a handgun is any different than fighting. I can have 20 guns on. If I'm not going to pull a trigger and be prepared to do that, then that they're going to use it on me. So learning how to fight. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, I've got friends who ask me all the time, what's the best weapon for home defense? You know, you could have, to Dino's point, you could have anything at home, unless you are trained often to use it. It could be used against you. And you know, that's probably a good segue to jump into this next one. You've got to think about those police officers or somebody like me who may be in the area armed and hears something taking place, right? So, you know, my natural propensity is to go towards it. You know, I guess you just never get it out of you. So when the police are coming, you've got to think about what they are doing there. They know that somebody's there trying to kill people or has killed people, and they are here to end that threat. They don't know who the threat is. You know, yeah, they called it into 911, but there's 25 calls going into 911. There's 35 things coming over the radio. You can't guarantee that the police officer who's in that hallway with you knows that the bad guy is, you know, an old white guy with white hair and wearing a black sweatshirt. You don't know that. He doesn't know that. You have to assume he doesn't know that. So you've got to remain calm. And as hard as that's going to be, it's so very important. And follow the officer's instructions. If they bring people out, even after the threat is perceived to be ended, they're going to bring people out, and we'll probably, I don't know if it's still in this video, but they're going to bring everybody out with their hands behind their heads. Hands are what kills people. So they want to see your hands. Same thing on a motor vehicle stop. If you get pulled over, keep your hands on that steering wheel. Don't put your hands here. Police officers always want to see your hands. So if you're walking out and there's police officers there, get your hands up like this. Let them see your hands. That's the most important thing. The second they see your hands, they're gonna calm down. Put down any items. I don't have it with me today because I'm traveling, but ordinarily I would take my handgun out and put it in my right hand and put my phone in my left hand. And at a quick glance, it's very almost impossible for the police officer to know that this is a phone and not a gun, especially if it's dark and the lighting's not great. Immediately raise hands and spread your fingers. Keep your hands visible at all times. Avoid making quick movements towards the police officers, such as holding on to them for safety. You got to remember, they're there to protect you. They've got to be able to move, right, to do that. Avoid pointing, screaming, and or yelling. I know you're afraid, but you've got to stay calm, as hard as it is. Don't stop to ask officers for help or direction when evacuating. You know how to get out, just get out. And if you don't, find your way out. Just proceed in the direction from which the officers are entering the premises, or follow the crowd. That's usually, if you don't know how to get out, they do. Next slide. So we'll watch another video. Nick?
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
I think, we're getting to the end of our presentation, and we have a few more slides and another video to go here, but I think that video used to be where we ended. It kind of brings everything that John and I were talking about today into a little bit of a reality, and shows you how important it is to act and act quickly. There's no doubt about it, a plan makes you better. There's no doubt about it, practice makes you better. Ask any athlete, ask anybody who needs to do something and to get well at it. You've got to practice. So having a plan and not practicing it, you may as well not have a plan. So it's imperative that you, if you haven't considered a plan, hopefully we woke you to one today, and we expressed how important it is that you think of one, create one. We here at Planned happy to help you, of course, with anything, any of your security needs. Been doing this for a long time, as Nick pointed out early. It is a little scary, watching those shots and people going down in the beginning. This is a video. This is for training. You never want it to happen in real life. And I'm sure anyone in law enforcement, including my friend John here, would say the best thing is to prevent something from happening. That's the best end to a situation, is when you didn't even know the situation was about to happen. And the way you do that is hardening your target. I've talked about that on these videos. I've talked about it during our civil unrest videos. I've talked about the importance of doing something before. And learn that in bodyguard school and training with the Secret Service. When the event happens, when it starts, you're already behind the ball. The work, the hard work, the effort happens well in advance of an event. So we're going to have Nick play your building your action plan video, so that you have a takeaway. Hopefully you don't worry about notes, because we're going to make this available to all of you, both the presentation and the video today. We're going to go ahead and play this next video about building your plan. Nick?
The Department of Homeland Security Active Shooter Action Plan is the benchmark in active shooter response training. We strongly recommend that you review their material at your earliest convenience. Their training video is over 90 minutes long and is available on the DHS.gov website. The following is a summary of some of the key points to consider when creating your active shooter plan. The Active Shooter Action Plan is comprised of 9 key steps. Assemble your active shooter team, lockdown protocol, notification protocol, evacuation, assembly, and accountability, first responder coordination, communication management, recovery, business continuity, ongoing training. You'll need to assemble your team, which will include the following responsibilities. Active Shooter Crisis Manager. This person is responsible for assembling the team, creating the plan, coordinating, training, and drills, etc. Individual floor or department wardens are responsible for executing your plan in their areas. Duties may include performing lockdowns, alerting coworkers, and accounting for the people in their areas. Assign a notification lead. This person may be responsible for notifying employees, calling 911, providing status updates to families, etc. Consider which doors should be locked in the event of an active shooter situation. Some doors, such as exit doors, may be left unlocked according to your plan. Stairwell and elevator doors all should be taken into consideration. There will be multiple parties to notify in the event of an active shooter situation. How will you notify your coworkers of an active shooter situation in progress? Audibly or visually? This is one of your most critical decisions. Who is responsible for calling 911? As part of your plan, determine what information is necessary to convey to police. If you're calling from a mobile phone, they may not immediately see your address. Give your company name, complete address, include floor and suite number where applicable. Give the number of shooters, provide description to police. Creating an evacuation plan includes identifying which exits are most convenient for each department, identifying alternate exits if the primary is blocked or too dangerous, plan to evacuate employees who may require additional assistance, decide where you assemble after evacuation, make sure it's a safe distance from the building, coordinate with team leads such as floor wardens, select the person responsible to conduct a roll call. Remember, not everyone comes in every day. As part of your plan, determine how you'll know who's missing. The area warden should be responsible for this info. Appoint the person responsible for speaking with the police when they arrive. Coordinate any vital information to EMS or paramedics. Determine who is responsible for the go bag and who will deliver it to first responders. Assign the person to provide accurate info to authorities, employees, family, notifying employees when it's safe to return to pick up belongings, and when the building will reopen for business. Who will speak to the press to control the information delivered to the public. Recovering from an event will take time and effort from many resources. Assign team members who will coordinate with hospitals, grief counselors, lawyers, employment assistants, insurance providers, etc. Is there a business continuity plan in place? Can employees continue their jobs from home if the building is closed? Are business systems backed up off-site frequently in case computers are damaged? Are there human backups in place should an employee suddenly no longer be able to do his or her job? Create a run, hide, fight training session and conduct frequent drills. Active shooter information changes periodically. Attend seminars and webinars. There's an active shooter emergency plan template available on the DHS website.
All right, so, a lot of what was just talked about has evolved this in the last, 11 months, right? The contingency plans. Can we work from home? Yes. Do we have backups? Yes, right? So a lot of those things are self-evident. And no one's suggesting that you have to do a full-blown out active shooter training session. It's scary. A lot of people just don't want to talk about it. But what you should be doing, all of you, if not just for yourself, if you have employees, depending on your role in your company, you need to think about these things and how you can incorporate them into everyday life without making them so scary, right? So talk about it when you're doing other things, fire drills, right? So fire drills is a great example. Identifying exits, emergency doors. Another thing you should probably be thinking about anyway is how is this person going to get in? What's your access control? I know that in the company I just left, one of the things that was brought to my attention was, John, the front door is wide open. Anybody can just stroll in here, and they do. Mostly, innocently and accidentally. But what if it's not innocent or accidental? What if it's on purpose and they're there to do harm? It's a disgruntled employee, a disgruntled customer. So think about those things now. And, when you go back to your office today, or whenever you go back to your office, or you go back to your house or the building where you live or the building that you manage, look around. Does that door really need to be open, or can it be locked? Lessen the avenues for people to get in. Is it less convenient for the residents, for the employees? Maybe. But is it more important to protect their safety? Absolutely. So that's something you need to look at all the time. The other thing they mentioned that that we didn't really touch upon, and again, if we were home, if I was home, I'd have a show and tell for you. I keep a very, very well stocked first aid kit in my truck. It's got an AED and all the bells and whistles. If you don't have a really, really well stocked first aid kit in your office, I really suggest you get one. It's $150 if you need my contact information. I'm sure will be shared. If you need guidance on what to get, by all means have one. And that's your go bag. And in that, you can also put things, information, just a sheet on the top of the kit about who to call and all the things they talked about, right? Who to notify, how to notify, what to do. You know, you can put those things right in there. It could be active shooter, it could be fire, it could be injuries, whatever you want to put in there. And again, it all comes back to training. So I urge you all to take this information and figure out how it fits your life, how it fits your business, and adapt it there too, right? So maybe it's going to be just talking about it in a company meeting. Hey, you know, I watched this seminar the other day that Planned was nice enough to put on about active shooter. I think maybe we should talk about it and take the pulse of your company leaders and see what their thoughts are. But it's really, really important to consider it. And if in closing, I think I just want to thank Planned Companies for doing this and inviting me to be part of it. I don't work for Planned. I've had business relationships with Planned for a really long time. Dino and I go back a decade plus now, and Planned's an amazing company, and I'm just thankful to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you for the kind words. And I love doing this with John. You know what? As Nick mentioned, I go on the road and do this, but having somebody compliment me and be able to remember things that I try to remember all the time, and with his expertise, it's always a pleasure doing this with you, John. And you know, in ending, and I'm going to talk about. I told you we talked about the Capitol and the situation there. And if you like John said earlier, if nothing else today, we didn't tell you got to go buy a gun. We didn't tell you have to do all this stuff. What we try to tell you is that you need a plan. And I hope that message came through loud and clear. We even showed you how to get it. We showed you some resources to go make a plan.
Call us if you need info.
Call us if you need info. We offered to help you with the plan. So I really hope you do. Let's talk about what happened on January 6th for a minute, because talk about planning. We all watched this horrible event unfold in front of our eyes on live television. And it was not the fault of the Capitol Police Department in any way. It was not the fault of a lot of the people who were injured, unfortunately, and took the brunt of the lack of preparation for the event on the 6th. Compare that to what the inauguration looked like. A mouse couldn't make it to the same area as where the folks were able to just walk in. That was all about preparation. And that's not my opinion. I've watched multiple security experts on news channels since that day, and every one of us are saying the same thing. There was a lack of preparation for that event. And then a lot of people say, oh, you know, let's talk about the guns again. You know, these guys had guns. How could this happen? Well, is the expectation that law enforcement officers are just going to mow people down in the streets at the Capitol building in DC? Of course they cannot do that. And if you also notice, and important to bring up, a lot of the folks coming into the building were not carrying deadly force weapons. So in a lot of areas, you have to meet deadly force with deadly force. If someone is not posing a deadly force situation to you, you cannot pose one to them. So another reason to go and get some fight training. So I just wanted to kind of end with that before we get into Q&A and we bring Nick back in here. I watched that event as a security professional. It bothered me because everything that we preach, our company name is Planned. So everything we believe in is about planning. And the more you do, the less of a chance of an incident.
And just remember what the old adage, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. So the difference between, you know, and oftentimes between life and death or a successful or failed incident is planning. And it doesn't have to be a written binder. It just needs to be some thought. And that's what we hope you take from this, is just keep it on the forefront of your mind, or at least in the back of your mind. And remember that if you need any more information, you need help, you just want to talk about it, and maybe, figure out how you can start planning for it, just feel free to reach out to me or Dino.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, John. And we did go a little over the hour, so but we left plenty of time for Q&A, and I'm happy to see you all stayed. Happy about that. So Nick, I'll pass it off to you.
Okay, Dino, looks like we have, well, there were two questions. I think they may have been covered. One was, what should be considered when developing a plan? And the other question is, what should be in the go bag?
So I'll answer the go bag one. Well, I could answer both. So what should be considered is whatever your realities are, right? Depending on if you're thinking about it for a residential building, it's going to be handled one way. If it's a small office, if it's a big office, it really depends. The go bag, in my opinion, should be 90% of what you need in a first aid kit are 4x4s and a roll of tape, roller bandage and a roll of tape. Literally, that's it. If you have to choose one thing, it's a sleeve of 4x4 sponge, gauze pads, a roller bandage. So if you get bleeding, you put them on, you roll it, tape it. If it keeps bleeding, don't take it off, just put more on and again, roll it. That's, if you had to do one thing, that's it. Outside of that, again, the information that whoever grabs that bag might need, contact information, where to go, who to call, what to do, stuff like that. But by all means, feel free to either email me or call me, and I'm happy to, review what would be good for you for your specific needs.
Something interesting about that sparked a thought in my mind. During civil unrest, we thought of something else that could happen, and that is a shelter-in-place situation. So here, we're talking about running, hiding, and fighting. What happens if there's a civil unrest situation where there's activity outside the building, whether it's a commercial or a residential property, and you cannot leave? So there's no running. So you are sheltered in place. So what suggestions we made.
That's a no-go bag.
That's a no-go bag. That's a stay bag.
Beer and potatoes.
and there's a lot more to that, right? Because now you have, especially if you're a residential high-rise building, you have to consider meeting the needs or trying to meet the needs of people's medications and what they, food and everything they're going to need, the shelter, sleeping accommodations, especially if everyone has to shelter in a new area or outside of their units. So something to consider, water supply, things that you may need during a shelter in place. So go bag's great, but I also want to focus your attention perhaps on, my other, and by the way, on our planned website, you can also find the civil unrest that I did with the chief of police from Mahwah, New Jersey, that is still out there, that some more great security tips for you if you're interested. And we're probably going to do that one live again sometime soon. I think we answered the other question with that wonderful video that Nick created with his voice. And you have this available to you as he's pointing out here, or just by reaching out. Were there any other questions?
Dino, yeah, there's a follow-up question probably for John about the go bag. Would you put a list of employees or residents in the go bag? What about a floor plan?
So, again, really depending on the size of yes, floor plan's a great idea for, when you get outside and, God forbid the police need to see it. Ideally, as far as the employee information, ideally that's on computer somewhere. Right. I used to do exactly that. I would have the employee book. It never gets updated, unless somebody's really thinking about it, it's not getting updated. And same thing with the go bag. Make sure that it's being maintained. I used to put a note in it that said, stop. If you open this, please report back to the office what you use so we can replace it. The life you save may be your own. I literally put that in every one of our first aid kits. So I think ideally you would have that in a spreadsheet, the employee information in a spreadsheet, and be able to access it from your phone.
In preparation, even another step you may want to consider, hopefully you are with whoever provides security for your property, have law enforcement have that information before an incident, right? So I spoke all day today about the more you do prior to an incident, the less you'll have to do in the middle of it. For sure, someone's going to forget to grab the go bag, right? For sure, everything that possibly could go wrong during an event is going to go wrong. But if there are people outside of the situation who you can alert and make aware of, if you have a good communication system, somebody who's not in the heat of battle, somebody who's somewhere else, you're part of our emergency plan. If this happens, you're being notified. Local law enforcement's great. A lot of times they'll even let you have a radio. If not, you'll have some signal to them. Batman used to do it with the signal up in the sky. Whatever it is, you want to be able to alert so that people can come and help that are not in the fight.
The other thing to consider also is we all have neighboring offices, neighboring buildings, right? So if I'll use a residential building as an example. Chances are there's another residential building across the street. Think about maybe cooperating, getting talking to your neighbor building, your neighbor management, and say, hey, listen, can I keep my floor plans and my emergency information in your fire command center or your neighbor office, across the street? So God forbid something's happening here, you have a safe place to go, look at that information, meet with the police or the fire department or EMS or whomever else is involved, and you have a safe place to keep it and to look at it in a safe environment. And that's something that you should really, it doesn't matter how small or big you are, that's something that you can really do.
Great point. All right, Nick, how we doing?
Yeah, we've got another question, Dino. Obviously, a high-rise downtown is different than a community of townhouses spread across multiple acres. The challenge is communication. Any tips or hints?
So high rises, in my opinion, are easier, right? Depending on where you are, but most high rises now require communication from the fire command center. So you have a microphone where you could speak over the horn strobes in the units themselves. And again, most management companies do have some type of alert. Either Building Link has it, and there's pretty much all of the software products that we use in residential property management have that phone blast, text blast, whatever it may be. So that's a great tool. The high rise with the microphone. If you're in the other environment, you're in a sprawling community. Again, it's going to be those tools that are only in the last 10 years or so. The text, the phone messages. It's hard when you're in a uncontrolled. The high rises, believe it or not, in my opinion, are easier because there's usually fire drills. The fire exits, there's 2 from every floor. So if something's coming down the hallway, you can go, you've got another option to go. The sprawling communities are really a challenge because people are constantly driving in and out. They're hard to control, access to. So both very different things, but I think, with proper planning, like we've talked about today, you can think about it now. So when, if God forbid the time ever comes, you've at least thought about it and know what your options are.
For sure. And marrying technology, most of us have these, and perhaps not everyone today has a smartphone, and people are still carrying a regular phone. It is SMS capable. In my opinion, those are the best. And Planned, we have a technology division, and we've created a tool called Nexus that will allow you to broadcast out messages to people, even if it's SMS, especially if it's SMS, because the smartphones have SMS, but the other phones don't. So the best way to communicate to everybody and capture everybody is to broadcast over this technology. I mean, we're getting Amber Alerts now on our phones when children are missing or cars are missing. It's the way the government is using it. When we talked with the chief of police and we did our civil unrest, police departments are using it. They're getting messages to their own people, to law enforcement officers, what they're doing, what they need to do when there's an emergency happening. So I'm a strong believer, and not only the old PA systems for in the building, they're kind of going away. What I think is a good option are SMS. Check ours out. We have it on and Nick, maybe you could put something up about our tech, maybe at the end, where people can find the specific tech area, make it easy for you. But we have a variety of technology now that we've married with our people delivery. So
Any other questions there?
Yeah, there's one more question. Do you have any special recommendations to consider for open plan offices with a lot of glass?
Yeah, actually I do. I don't know the name of it exactly, but if you Google, I think it's 3M, makes a security film that you can't see. Well, you could see it if you really, really look for it, but they put a film over glass, and in the videos, if you YouTube it, you'll see that they shoot through it, right, without the coating on it. And the glass, the way it's supposed to, it's tempered glass, it shatters into a lot of little pieces. Then they put the film over it and they shoot it. Even after shooting it multiple times or hitting it with a hammer or whatever else, it's hard to get through. And what it does is it will buy you precious moments, right? So if I shoot or throw a chair or a hammer or anything else through a window, I'm through that window in 2 seconds. If I have this film on it and I try to break it, it's going to take me 5 minutes to get through that glass. And what's happening on the other side of that glass during that 5 minutes? People are going out the back door. So it's something, that's a great question. And there is technology out there. We did it at a school that I managed. It's not cheap, but it definitely, it saves burglaries if you're in a high burglary area. Graffiti, if they graffiti all your windows and you can't get it off, you just peel it off and put new up. So it's definitely there. Great question.
Yeah, we've had, they actually reached out to me, one of the companies, I don't know if there's multiple, who saw our presentation. They potentially were going to do a presentation with them down the road, but it is an impressive product. I thought you were going to say, how do we hide with the glass? That's why I started laughing.
Maybe that was the question.
But that would be a lot more difficult, but buying those precious moments, hardening the target, and what it could actually do if somebody tries to get through and it can't get through right away, they might get deterred from doing it at all. They might say, the heck with this. What kind of glass is this? Let's go to a building that doesn't have it. Try that tomorrow. So deterring is a lot what security is all about. I get asked, why do we need security? Why is it important? It's an insurance policy. When good security is working, something's not happening to you that are happening to others. But unfortunately, they don't ring your bell and tell you, hey, we were going to do this on your property today, but because that great planned security guard was sitting there, we decided not to. That doesn't happen. So we never know effective security, but we do know the more steps and measures you take, the harder your target is and the less chance of people to cause harm.
I hear all the time, oh, we've got a great camera system. So I could tell you how many countless, mindless hours I sat watching videotape of crimes or trying to find crimes on video. And I can tell you this, cameras are great at documenting crime. That's all they do. They do not prevent crime. People don't care if they're on video. So cameras are not a worthy investment for sure, so you know what happened, but don't think of them as a preventative tool, because they're not. But getting back to the glass, if you're a manager or an owner, like I suggested earlier, when you go back to your office, look around. What steps can you do to harden the target? Lock doors, install this break-proof glass application, and other things, right?
Yeah, I get asked, and we train at Planned for many years, what's the difference between being in law enforcement and now being in security? And I think I could tell you personally, in law enforcement, a lot of what I was responding to was after something happened, after the fact. In security, I have the privilege of preventing something from happening. And I enjoy that far more than responding to a situation that's already a disaster and cleaning it up. I love preventing. And that's what I hope we did with you today. And that's what I hope we'll do with you going forward. Nick?
Dino, we have one more. How often should a complex run an active shooter drill? not unlike prior fire drills, and the emergency preparedness manual, should they be updated now, inclusive of civil unrest, active shooter, along with fire drills and bomb threats?
Yeah, so again, it really depends on your situation. I'll give a great example. My office was in a residential building at the corner of Grove and Montgomery Street in Jersey City. Anybody familiar with that area knows that it's directly across the street from City Hall, right? So our exposure, anytime there was a protest, we had a lot of active protests over the summer. We were right across the street from City Hall. So absolutely, the plans and my staff there were well versed on what to do and how to handle the building, right? What doors we're locking that we don't ordinarily lock, what we do in the event somebody breaches that front door. They were much better trained for civil unrest than a building that I had on the other side of the park, on the other side of town in a sleepy park-like neighborhood, right? So depending on your specific situation, I think, again, if you do nothing else, at least think about it, what we talked about today, and be aware. Awareness is the key. And if you are going to do a plan, make sure that your local police will be thrilled. If you call, even if you're in a city and you call the local precinct and say, hey, listen, we're thinking about doing this, they will absolutely send their community relations officer there to build that with you specifically for your specific space. If you're not comfortable doing that, or you're not sure, if you want somebody, Dino and I are in this business, we're in your business, I'm happy to do it with you as well. Just call me and I'm happy to sit down with you or do it over the phone or whatever, however I can help.
Absolutely. Anything is better than nothing, right? So it's what works for you. I would suggest for how often. I don't like mixing topics. I think civil unrest and what I learned is that the longer the training, the less people are going to retain. They get the deer in headlights. These are dedicated topics that I think deserve their own place. So with that said, what you may want to consider is doing a quarterly security meeting and have an hour tops. If you're going to do some training or some role playing, perhaps an hour and a half. But if you combined civil unrest, gosh, I could probably do 2 days on. It's such a big topic. And we did do a long presentation. If you're mixing those, it's going to be long. I would suggest out of the gate, if you're doing nothing today, try to put aside a quarterly meeting with a security topic, get help. Again, John and I would be happy to. We do these webinars. We'd love to help you. Anyway.
Something else you can consider also that I would incorporate it with, and it was something I did because of the residential end. We did CPR, first aid and AED training, and that evolved, right? So last year I added Narcan because of the opioid prevalence. You can add on to those things. So what would have normally been a 2-hour training block or a 3-hour training block can now become a 4. And you throw an active shooter in, this session, and a civil unrest in next session. And, like we talked about, the things that are necessary in our environment, sexual harassment and, whatever it may be. And CPR and first aid is a great example of something you can do for your employees. It's relatively inexpensive. It's something they'll use at home, right? Hopefully not, but something they can use at home. And it gives you a good segue into adding things like what we're talking about today.
All great questions, everyone. Really appreciate it. We still got a little time if there's anything.
Any other, Nick?
That was our last question.
All right.
All right, great. So on behalf of John and myself, in addition to the security stuff, we hope you and your families are all staying safe, practicing social distancing and all this great stuff, which I'm sure you've heard from many others. You don't need me to tell you again. But most important, we want you well. We together with Planned and with John, we want our people well. We've been taking care of our own and taking care of you. If there are suggestions for other webinars you'd like for us to do, we did a whole series and they're on our website. You're welcome to them. But we're continually going to brush this one off, because we love doing it, and B, because we do think it's important and it evolves. You know, we were able to add a capital stuff today and some other things. So this topic will certainly, unfortunately, evolve.
It's not going away.
It's not going away.
You know, we did this 11 months ago, and you know, so much has changed in those 11 months.
Yeah.
So keep it fresh and keep it in the forefront of everybody's mind.
Awesome.
And thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming today.
Have a great day.
Really appreciate it.